Aloha kako, hepule kako. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you, Lord, for this day. We give you all the praises from sun up to sundown, Lord. Lord, we thank you for this gathering here tonight, for the hands that have put this together, for all of the help and all of the guidance and all of the support that we get from the department and the engineers and everyone that's involved. Lord, we ask you for forgiveness this evening, and we hope that everything that we say tonight is pleasing unto your ears, Lord. And if not, if it is displeasing, Lord, we ask for your graces. We ask for safety for those that are still on their way, and we ask for a prosperous and great evening to kuka to come together to talk about what our options are and to give us the guidance that we need from all of the different departments that are here represented to help us. And Lord, all of these things we ask in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Mahalo, Jan. And everyone should be very appreciative of the leadership you do have at your Homestead Association. They really advocated that the department and federal agencies pay attention to this issue. So that's one of the big reasons why we're here tonight. Aloha, my name is Andrew Choi. I'm the Planning Program Manager at the Department of Hawaiian Homelands. With me this evening, I have Michael Lowe from our Information Community Relations Office, who will be helping with the Zoom and any audio issues that we have this evening. I also have Nancy McPherson, who's one of our senior planners, who is one of the leads on the department's cesspool conversion initiatives and looking for federal funding and how do we do this better. We also are fortunate to partner with the Environmental Protection Agency, the Federal Environmental Protection Agency, and its consultants, AECOM, who will introduce themselves later this evening. With that, I'll pass it over to Nancy, who will walk us through our first part of our presentation this evening.
Mahalo, Andrew, and I just want to let everybody know that Andrew's going to be moving on as Monday's his last day, and we just really appreciated all of his leadership for the planning office. He's been a wonderful program manager, and we're going to miss him. Mahalo, everyone. Thank you for welcoming us into your community. We always love coming out here. It's so beautiful, and the smell of the ocean as I'm driving out, and it's just a beautiful place. So, okay, so the purpose of this meeting, we did have a meeting February 3rd. We didn't have involvement of everybody we needed to be there, unfortunately. And so this is a follow-up to that meeting to try to get you folks another update with some of the people who are actually doing the work as part of the Closing America's Wastewater Access Gap Technical Assistance Project. So we're introducing the pilot project for Wai anae Valley Homestead and the project team. We're going to discuss how we are determining cesspool alternatives. We're identifying the time frame of the project and providing an opportunity for community comments and questions. So meeting Kuleana, we'd like to get through the presentation, and please write down your questions. There's a lot of material we want to share tonight. So as we go along, please write them down on the green sheet or any of your other sheets, and we'll make sure we save time to answer your questions after the presentation. Please be respectful of the person talking. Don't interrupt people. I think you guys know all of this stuff, and so I think it'll be fine, but be respectful, show aloha, and have an open mind. So this is our agenda. Next slide. So we're doing welcome and introductions, housekeeping, meeting Kuleana. The restrooms are as you come in down this hallway. So if you just go back out that way, that's the restrooms. First, we're going to give you a summary of the February 3rd meeting and the feedback that we got. A lot of the questions that you asked, and we have found out more information. So we're going to respond to those questions, give you the answers, not completely, but as much as we have right now, introduce the project, and then do question and answer session, and then finally share next steps. So next slide is the big picture. Wai anae Valley Homestead is going to be a pilot project. It's going to be the first DHHL Cesspool conversion project. So we're very excited about it, and we want to get it right. So this would be a way to work everything out, and then also start doing this in other homestead areas once we've taken care of Wai anae Valley. And then it's also helping us all figure out how to make the conversions happen quickly and affordably with the least amount of pain as possible. This is helping us formulate a strategy and a way to work with all the different agencies to approach solving this problem. And we're getting assistance from county, state, and federal agencies. So it's really a CACO thing, CACO effort. And the contractors are going to be here tonight to explain the project, the technical assistance they're providing, and how they're looking specifically at Wai anae Valley Homestead for the pilot project. Okay, we're going to go quickly into the summary of the February 3rd meeting. We had an agenda. We did an informational presentation. How many of you here were at that February 3rd meeting? A few of you? Oh, awesome. Thank you for coming back. So we did give a presentation on wastewater systems in Hawaii, what the laws are now. Act 125 was passed in 2017, so there's new requirements. The DHHL did an Oahu cesspool assessment, and Wai anae Valley was part of that assessment, so we shared information about that project. And then the DHHL assistance and support. So, Jan reached out. We had Ted Johns came out to Wai anae, and there was some early technical assistance that was provided. And so that's at that point, EPA realized, hey, there's a bigger project here, and we really want to help. And so that now we're kind of in that bigger phase. So we have more information for you. And so then we talked about issues, questions, and concerns, and next steps. So we go to the cesspool survey results. So this actually, not all the lots that are in green were part of the survey because it was already known that they were on the sewer system. But because it was color coded, we wanted to show, where is everyone at in this homestead. So you can see the numbers there. There are 462 lots altogether. There were 108 cesspools for the lots that were accessed. 37 of the lots weren't accessed. So anybody who is here that is on a lot that wasn't accessed, please check by your name, and we want to follow up with you and possibly come out and visit your lot. We want to complete the project. We want to get everybody taken care of. And then 305 lots are sewered. So let's go to the questions and responses. Now, there's a lot of information here. So what I suggest, instead of putting everybody to sleep reading through all of this, what I'd like to do is, a couple of highlights were, the question about using a cesspool as a seepage pit. Department of Health used to issue variances for this, and they really don't want to do that anymore. So, we're looking at other options. And then, notifications of access to grants. Yes, we're going to make sure that all that information's available to you a bunch of different ways. Really, you folks don't have to convert until 2050, but we know this is a process. We'd like to get ahead of the game. So we really are trying to get this going now so that everybody's not all jammed up at the end, because that's what could happen. So let's go to the next slide. There were some questions about process. We are going to try to get you that information, but we intend to, try to manage the entire process so you folks don't have to deal with it individually on each of your lots. So that's kind of the idea of just doing the whole homestead together. And we don't want you to get fined or anything like that. It's really DHHL's responsibility as the landowner. And then as far as extending sewer lines, the idea is we're going to be accessing state revolving fund monies, hopefully. We're looking at a lot of different sources, but, so DHHL is probably going to run that project. And then also we're looking at extending the laterals to your lot and connecting your houses. So all you folks will have to do after that is maintain your lateral is all. If it clogs up, you got to figure out how to unclog it. Next slide. So we really do want those 37 lessees to come into the tent and be a part of this project. We want to make sure that everyone gets assistance with this. We are looking at low pressure sewer systems, but those grinder pumps can last up to 20 years if you take care of them. And then we do know that the wastewater treatment plant does have capacity to add everyone who can be added to the city's sewer system. Okay, next, fourth slide. So we do want to make sure that, your lots aren't damaged when all of this happens. We're going to take into consideration any existing improvements. We will have some information later on, and there's some in your handout at the end about the pollution that cesspools cause, and they have done water testing out here in Kaupuni Stream and have detected bacteria. So it is having an effect. And then the water bill and wastewater bill issue, we go into some detail talking about that, but there's more information on the city's website as well. Okay, so let's go to activities since the February 3rd meeting. We've been busy. We rescheduled the site visit, so that happened on April 3rd. There was an big interagency meeting on March 13th, and then tonight's community meeting. We have a project webpage now on the department's website for cesspools. We've been meeting regularly with EPA and the team of consultants to keep things going. We're continuing to work with EPA, Department of Health, and the city to pursue funding and technical assistance. And we are continuing to work with your community's leadership to coordinate engagement, and that's been really helpful. Okay, so now we are going to move into the presentation by the consultants to talk about the Wai anae Valley Wine Homestead, Closing America's Wastewater Access Gap. And I'll introduce Jordan Famey, who is a PE.
Thanks, Nancy. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. My name is Jordan Famey. I'm an engineer with AECOM. Before we get started, I wanted to check with the Zoom folks, acknowledge everybody's there. And okay, great. Okay. So yeah, before we introduce the team, just wanted to start with the purpose and objectives of this whole effort that we're doing. I think Nancy pretty much covered it, but I just thought we'd start with this, and it's really to provide technical assistance to the community for cesspool conversion options. Specific objectives. First one, observing the existing infrastructure, what's really out there right now, understanding the community, the layout, where are their cesspools, where's their sewers, the topography, the layout. We'll be listening to community input. Tonight is one of those nights. There's been a few others that you had, but we want to hear what your concerns are and wrap them up into this whole effort. We'll be evaluating the viable options for cesspool conversions, sewer, septic tank, cluster systems, things like that. There's a lot of different ways to do it, and we'll be evaluating those options. How much do they cost? What's the cost to you folks? What's the cost to DHHL? What's the cost to the city, who may ultimately be owning and operating it? And that will help us evaluate what's the right path to take. And then we'll wrap all that up into a report. And that report will be used to obtain funding. That's a big part of it. It's expensive to do this stuff, and nobody can do it on their own. And spelling it out in this report will allow the department to go and obtain funding. All right, so we're starting with a nice picture of Michael from the EPA. I think Sydney on the Zoom call is going to try and chime in here. I'm not sure if she's able to get audio through here. Thanks. Yeah, there's a number of different folks from different organizations who are all working together on this.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Loud and clear.
Excellent. I'll be introducing my colleague, Michael Mezzacapo. He's a physical scientist with EPA Headquarters Office of Wastewater Management. He's focused on providing wastewater technical assistance and technology advancement in rural and island communities. Michael helps lead the Closing America's Wastewater Access Gap Community Initiative, and previously has worked at the University of Hawaii Water Resource Research Center and Sea Grant College program as an outreach specialist on water quality issues. Michael served on the state cesspool conversion working group from 2019 to 2022 and helped author several cesspool-related reports and development of the Hawaii Cesspool Prioritization Tool. He continues to support Hawaiian communities protecting their water for current and future generations. And he's located on the East Coast. So it was a little bit of a late night, so we're here on his behalf. I think we can stay on that previous slide, actually.
Yeah, so yeah, Michael is our EPA person for this project. I'm Jordan Famey with AECOM. I'm an engineer. I've been working with AECOM for 15 years or so. I live in Nu'uanu and work in downtown Honolulu. For all that time, I've been working on wastewater projects, sewers, treatment plants, pump stations, things like that. Also working on this project is Destin. He's new to our company. Glad to have him here. He's been working hard on this project so far, so he'll be supporting us throughout the way. And then also, yeah, on the Zoom call, we've got Teresa and Sydney with ERG. You want to introduce yourself? Thanks.
Is there a way that Teresa can be unmuted?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Teresa Connor. I'm with ERG, a senior environmental engineer. Have been working with communities on wastewater issues and water issues for about 34 years, and happy to be here. I'll be helping with the funding. What Jordan turns into technical, we'll take that and help find ways to fund these projects. And so, Sydney, I'll turn it.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sydney Diamond. Thank you for having us here tonight. I also work at ERG with Teresa and serve as a project analyst for this project. So coordinating across the different dynamic team we have and also making sure our deadlines are all met. And I am place-based in southwestern Colorado.
Thanks, Michael. Great having awesome AV person. Okay, so we can go to the project history slide and go from there. All right. So yeah, there's been a number of meetings so far. Some of you folks may be wondering, why do we just keep having meetings? There's a handful of reasons for that, but there's been 3 of them mainly. 2 of them, the conversations mapping. I think the first one was at the library in January 2024. And then there was the community meeting that some of us weren't able to attend for certain reasons. That was in February. And then there was the recent conversations mapping, May 2025, that just happened. A lot of questions and comments came of those. We've been tallying those, understanding them, putting together responses, and we're rolling all that into this project here. But there's kind of some recurring themes and a lot of the questions that come up. What is this stuff going to cost? What's it going to cost me? Questions about the specific technology, questions about the process. What's the process to convert my cesspool to a septic tank or something like that? And then, hey, what are there really environmental impacts to having a cesspool? Is it really a problem that we need to address, other than it just being the law and that we have to do it? So those are kind of some of the recurring questions. I think we have some responses to those. But I think Sydney was going to describe a bit about the program, the Closing America's Wastewater Access Gap program. Sorry, Michael, I'm making this pretty hard. I just keep switching back and forth.
Thanks. Yeah, so Closing America's Wastewater Access Gap Initiative. This initiative is a no-cost technical assistance to community with failing septic systems and cesspool program. It began as a pilot for 11 communities across the U.S. in 2022, and it was funded by the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And since then, in 2024, EPA expanded the initiative to serve 150 communities across the U.S. and territories. Next slide, please. And so with this program is the abundance of technical assistance. And so EPA contractors and technical assistance providers work together, and with relevant expertise are positioned to assist communities with specific needs. And so some examples are listed below. So assessing wastewater needs, evaluating the feasibility of wastewater solutions, identifying funding options such as grants and financing, and help with completing preliminary engineering and paperwork requirements for funding applications, and also assisting with establishing an ordinance for wastewater management. So here's a bit of a flow chart that explains our project team. So EPA, Michael, who we introduced earlier, that's their project leadership and points of contact to the community. Teresa and myself with ERG are participating in overall project management tasks and tracking. We're also supporting AECOM, Jordan, providing engineering and management and funding support where it's needed. And then AECOM is leading the, are the lead project engineers, and they're investigating wastewater alternatives for your community. So you have a very robust explanation of what he has developed a little bit later on. And then DHHL is a project partner working with ERG, AECOM, your community, and DOH to assess wastewater solutions and apply for funding. We can move to the next slide.
Okay. Yeah, expectations for this project is that it's not a construction project. It would be nice if we could just go and build what needs to be built, but we can't do that. First, we got to start with the study, evaluate the alternatives, understand the costs, and do the report, and before we can get the money to build anything. So it's not a construction project, it's a planning study. And yeah, it'll be a future project to design and construct it. once the funding is obtained. So I'd love to be involved in that, but for now, it's just figuring out the path. Timeline. Let's talk through the timeline. We're looking to do this all in about a year's time, roughly. So we're kind of early on in it right now. We started with a site visit in early April. And now here we are at the first community meeting. We'll be putting together the alternatives analysis and preliminary engineering report. So that's the study, the draft of it by August. So it'll be in mid-August, we'll have a report. Sometime after that in August, we'd like to get together, to have another meeting, share the findings with you folks, hear what you think. And then we'll consider all that, wrap it up into the report, and have a final report by October. And if everybody's up for it, we'd be happy to do another community meeting. From there, DHHL will have a concept of what the project looks like. They'll have an idea of the costs, and then they'll work together with DOH to submit that for a funding application.
Great. So is this me, Jordan?
Yeah, I think this is you. Thanks.
Thanks.
Not much of a money guy.
So when it comes to funding the cesspool conversions, there's multiple sources that we're looking at, and we're looking at what's needed to make those applications and deliver the funding project. So we're evaluating multiple different sources, including the Clean Water State Revolving Fund, as Nancy mentioned earlier, as well as USDA rural development funds. And so with that, we're having ongoing coordination with the Department of Health that runs the Clean Water State Revolving Fund. This would be the first kind of non-county or first state agency to make an application to them. So we're figuring out what's needed between the two agencies to kind of make that click, as well as EPA and City and County of Honolulu. And so we are looking for creative ways to use funds and kind of, you know, we might be layering different funds on top of each other to get as much subsidy and grant funding as possible for the project. And so it might be different from your typical capital projects if you guys are used to how roadways are constructed or anything else. We expect some creativity with how the funding applications get done, or at least, you know, we know we're going to have to make some adjustments for like the SRF funding and others for DHHL to make that application. So we're having those conversations early as a parallel path while Jordan's doing the technical work. Back to you, Jordan.
All right. Thanks. Okay, so yeah, Nancy shared this map already, but I think it's a it's a great map that kind of describes what's out there right now. And yeah, so basically the bold black line is the project area. That's what we're evaluating. And I suppose everybody here lives within the project area, I think. Yeah. So what you also see is that there's a lot of existing sewers that are already within the community, but we know there are some roads or some homes that are not served by any sewers. If they were already there, you could just simply connect to them, but there's quite a cost to install new ones. Does it make sense instead that those folks would do a septic tank or something like that? That's what we're evaluating. But yeah, this is the project area for this evaluation. Okay, now we got a video that UH put together that we'll share with you folks.
Cesspool construction was recently banned in Hawaii, But what is a cesspool and what problems do they cause? A cesspool is basically a covered hole in the ground. It is sometimes lined with brick or concrete. Open joints in the lining allow liquid and solid waste to seep through. Cesspools are designed to dispose of waste, but not to treat it. If you have a cesspool, when you flush your toilet, use your kitchen sink, take a shower, or do laundry, untreated wastewater and gray water is directed into this hole underground. Human waste moves away from the cesspool through Hawaii's porous lava rock. Eventually, it reaches the water underground and contaminates it with dangerous pathogens and household chemicals. Because we live on islands, everything is interconnected. We rely on underground aquifers for our drinking water. Water from these aquifers is also connected to the ocean through a process called submarine groundwater discharge. When pollution from cesspools travels in water underground, it impairs our drinking water sources and negatively impacts our ocean ecosystems. Human waste contains viruses and bacteria that can make us sick if we consume water contaminated with them. Our waste naturally contains nutrients like nitrogen that can wreak havoc on coral reefs by causing algal blooms. The medications we take and personal care products we use can also negatively impact Hawaii's plants and animals. Hawaii has over 83,000 cesspools that contribute an estimated 52 million gallons of raw sewage into our environment every day. Because of these impacts, cesspools are required to be replaced with more effective forms of wastewater treatment by 2050. To continue to protect our health, that of our loved ones, and of our environment, cesspools need to be upgraded as soon as possible. For more information on cesspools in your neighborhood, visit hawaiicesspooltool.org. This video was produced by the Hawaii Department of Health, University of Hawaii Sea Grant College Program, and the Water Resources Research Center at the University of Hawaii.
Okay, hopefully that was enlightening. But what we know right now is there's about 100 or more cesspools in the community that need to be converted by 2050. We know that the city sewer is nearby, and that city sewer then connects to Wai anae wastewater treatment plant from your neighborhood and down that way. We also know that the housing in the community is pretty dense. You know, there's not most of the homes are packed in kind of tight, which makes it a challenge for the individual wastewater systems like septic tanks. That's what you would have right in your yard. If you don't have enough space for that, it's not going to work. Or cluster systems. It's another type of approach where you need a decent amount of space to treat the wastewater. So that's sort of what we're up against. You know, if there was if each house had an acre of property on it or something like that, it would be pretty straightforward. Everybody could have a septic tank and be done with it, but that's not really the case. So got another map that can kind of, it doesn't show up too good on there, but kind of point out some of the thank you. All right. Yeah, so here's basically the whole outline of the community. Puhinalo Place, Ko'olina Street, the ag lots are up here, and then Wai anae Valley Road is right here. The blue lines show the existing sewers, and then the orange dots show the cesspools. So really the main, you know, the folks that are in here that are already connected to these existing sewers, you know, nothing is really going to change for those folks. Really, it's these areas in here where there is no sewer and there's cesspools. That's what we're evaluating, is what do we do for those areas. So there's an 8-inch, these are all 8-inch sewers, which is good, you know, typical capacity. Then eventually it connects to this 16-inch sewer, which is owned by the city. So then, yeah, it cuts behind these few homes right here. I think right now there's like a construction trailer over there and a sign for the sewer project that's going on. So yeah, it cuts back behind there, and then it reconnects to Wai anae Valley Road and goes down from there and flows to the treatment plant, where then it's treated. I didn't put a nice picture of the treatment plant on there, but it's treated at the plant and it discharges through a deep ocean outfall after going through secondary treatment. And Wai anae wastewater treatment plant actually has a pretty good track record. They won an award for meeting their permit requirements 20 years in a row without without messing up, basically. But so yeah, we're trying to determine how best do we convert all these cesspools in a way that's affordable to you folks, affordable to the owners too, like DHHL, and ultimately the city. The city will be on the hook eventually to maintain these sewers. So it's got to be something that's not going to put a burden on them. It's going to put some burden on them, but we got to balance the burden. It needs to be acceptable to the community. You know, for example, you probably don't want a sewer going right through your front yard or something like that, right? We don't want to knock down your rock wall to build a sewer, those kind of things we're avoiding. It needs to meet the environmental requirements. Those are defined by the Department of Health. It needs to be achievable. So it's got to be something that we can afford. It's got to be something we can build, something that we know contractors know how to build. It has to be something that everybody is comfortable maintaining. And it's got to be proven. We're not looking to try something new that's never been done before. We need to do something that's proven. So that's kind of what's in the back of our mind as we go through this and evaluate the options. So there's sort of four main concepts that we're looking at. Ultimately, it'll probably be a combination of these depending on the different layout of the streets. Some streets slope down, some slope up. Some properties are bigger, some are smaller. So it'll likely be a combination of these, but we'll walk through kind of what is entailed for each of these concepts here. So the first one is just the traditional gravity sewer. So what I want to do is, as we go through each of these, kind of describe who is responsible for which piece of it, how it's laid out in your yard, and who's responsible for what. So for the gravity sewer, it starts at your home. You have a lateral. You all probably have laterals, whether you have a sewer or a cesspool or a septic tank, right? That's the pipe that leaves your house and then goes to wherever it's going. So that's the responsibility of you, to, like Nancy said, to maintain it. If it gets a clog, that's up to you to either get out there and clear it or call the plumber. DHHL won't be able to really help with that. But the sewer main, the sewer that's out in the road, any pump stations, that'll be the responsibility of DHHL. And ultimately, the idea is that the city wants to take it over, but DHHL will build the project, build it to the city's standards. And when we show the city that, hey, it was built the way that you want it, then they'll take it. Sewer bill. If it is a gravity sewer, unfortunately, there's a sewer bill that goes along with that. Yeah, so I wanted to ask, who here pays a sewer bill? If everybody has cesspool or septic, then nobody does, but I'm sorry to single you out, Jan. Oh, gosh, didn't mean to do that. So, all right, I thought maybe there'd be some folks who are connected to the sewer too, but yeah, so I get that. Who wants to start paying a sewer bill if you don't already pay one, right? The sewer mains, yeah, the pump stations, they'll be maintained by the DHHL at first, and then ultimately the city. already told you that if it's a sewer, it'll end up at the Wai anae wastewater treatment plant. All right, then I've got a little diagram. Basically, the diagram shows, doesn't show up great there, but I wanted to show where it's your responsibility, which is basically within your property. You know, that little green pipe there, yeah, that's the lateral coming out of the home. There's always going to be a clean out pipe that's near your property line. So if something gets plugged, that's the access point for the plumber to get in there and clear it out. That's the line of demarcation right there. And then once it gets out into the road, it's the responsibility of DHHL or ultimately the city. But you know, it flows downhill, so the sewer takes advantage of gravity and flows downhill through the pipe. All right, yeah, the next alternative or option is low pressure sewer system. We also say LPSS. So that starts from a lateral connection at the home. Same thing, the pipe coming out of your home flows by gravity until it gets to a grinder pump. So the grinder pump would be in your yard. The top of it would look like the top of a septic tank or maybe a cesspool. Usually it's a green cover about maybe this big around, and it's in a pit that's maybe this deep or so. And it's a pump that's in a well, basically, like a sump. As that fills up, it'll kick on a control to turn on the pump. The pump will pump it out to the road. The reason why you would do that is if your house is lower than the sewer that's in the street. Usually that's not the case, but I know there are some homes in the community that look like they might be like that, where especially if there's like a Ohana unit in the back and it's kind of sloped down, you might need that pump to get up to the road. So from the pump, there's a pressurized pipe. Usually it's a PVC pipe, and it would connect to the sewer main in the street. And that pressurized main and the sewer mains, that would all be the responsibility of DHHL in the city. So that grinder pump, that could be maintained either by you, the owner. More likely it would be a contract operator. So you would call somebody like a mechanical contractor or plumber. When they install them, usually you get a 2-year warranty on it, where if something goes wrong, they come out and fix it. And after that, basically there's like a little red light that goes off if something's wrong, and you call them for a service call. But honestly, these things are usually pretty maintenance free. Or, you know, we haven't defined who's really going to maintain them yet. It's not out of the question. It could be, who knows, maybe it could be DHHL hiring somebody. Those are all things that we'll be evaluating. Since these would ultimately probably connect to the sewer and the treatment plant, there'd be a sewer bill associated with this too, just like all the other regular sewer connections. All right, go to the next slide, please. There's a little diagram that shows okay. So here's the home. Here's the lateral, just like everybody has coming out of their house, and where it would normally connect into the cesspool. Instead, it connects into the grinder pump and tank, this green box right here. Notice, like I was describing about, you would really only do this when your house is lower than the road. As if your house is lower than the road, and say the sewer is up here, it couldn't flow by gravity on its own because it would go down below the main. So it pumps it up high, and then it lets it flow by gravity. So you'd be responsible for this, but maybe you'd have support from a plumbing contractor, or DHHL may manage that whole thing. We're not sure. But once it gets out to the road, it's not your responsibility anymore. It would be DHHL or the cities. And here's some photos of what it would look like. So there's the cap of it. The pump would be right in there under that cap. And then right up, usually against your house or maybe next to it on like some unistrut, there'd be a little control panel. Yeah, the electrical connection and control panel. So pretty low energy usage. I had ran the numbers on what it was. It was pretty minor electrical for the year. I want to say maybe it was like $50 for the year or something to run it. All right, so we can go to the next one, which is individual wastewater system. So this is, yeah, the septic tank, basically septic tank one, or it could be something more high tech than that, like an aerobic treatment unit. But just like all the other alternatives, it starts with the lateral connection to the home, which is yours. And then it would connect into the septic tank or aerobic treatment unit. Septic tank is really just a tank that separates the solids from the liquids, where the aerobic treatment unit has a little compressor and it blows compressed air down into there, and that provides treatment, believe it or not. And after it leaves that tank, it then goes to a leach field. And the leach field distributes it underground in your yard and allows, another thing that's pretty wild, it allows microbes in the soil to break down the waste. So cost-wise, ballpark 30,000 to 70,000 per septic improvement. It's a big cost. And like Nancy said, we're trying to get funding to do everything so that you folks don't have to pay for that. But normally if somebody does it, they have to pay for it. Maybe there'd be some benefit of doing it together. Say we have, 20 septic conversions that we can do. Maybe we can get a better cost for it than if we were just to do it one by one. There's not a lot of examples of that, but we're looking into it. I guess the benefit of this alternative is that you don't have a sewer bill. But you do have to pay for other stuff, maintenance. There's a cost that goes along with it, and it's likely to be more than your cesspool. So that tank has to be pumped out. There'll be solids in the tank that has to be pumped out depending on the situation every 1 to 5 years. And then there's a leach field. The leach field usually has maybe a 20-year life or something like that. Ultimately, the leach field will get plugged one day and you'll have to redo it. We had the pleasure of that happening to my mom at Christmas. We were all visiting her, and the leach field got plugged and we couldn't use the washing machine when we were visiting her. It was a bummer. But yeah, the issue with this alternative, there's a few issues with this option, but one of them is that DOH may only allow it. They do only allow it if sewer is not available. So it's in the rules. If sewer is there, you can't have a septic tank. Now, sewer is not at your house, maybe, probably for most of you folks, but it's pretty close by. So it's not really known if DOH would even allow IWSs for everybody. Everybody's house is different. Every lot's different. There's different soils. The sizing of the leach field comes down to the soil percolation rate. So how fast does the water seep through the ground? Before you have it built, there's a test that's done, a percolation test, and they basically pour water into a hole and measure how fast it goes down. The faster it goes down, the smaller your leach field can be. If it's really slow to go down, then you need to have a really big leach field. And you don't have a lot of space at your house, in your yard. You might not even have enough space for the leach field that's required. And then the water coming out of that septic tank or aerobic treatment unit is decent. It's definitely going to be better than a cesspool, but it's still not great. It's still not really clean water that's constantly going down into your yard under the soil. So I've got a photo of a image figure of a septic tank here. Let's go to this side. All right, so here's the septic tank. Here's your top of your yard. These two green caps allow maintenance. They're openings for maintenance, but the flow from your house, the sewage goes into this pipe and drops into the tank. Now the tank is separated into two sides here, and there's a gap in the middle that allows the liquid to pass through. But this left side holds the solids. They settle down to the bottom, and grease and scum floats up to the top and is held there. So this is what needs to get pumped out every so often. But the liquid, as it fills up, goes over to this other chamber and then goes up through this pipe and out into your yard to the leach field. That's how the septic tank works. But that's really just the first step of it. The next step, maybe even more important or just as important, is the leach field. We could go to the next slide. All right, so this is a picture of a leach field. I think this is on Hawaii Island. This is the tank that was just shown in that last picture. So the pipe would come in, connect to this side of the tank. The solids would settle out there, and the scum and grease and the liquid would go over to this side, and then it would discharge into this leach field right here. So it disperses it into this soil. If you have good soil, you can use what's there. If you don't have good soil, then you have to bring in particular soil that has the right properties. The size of this, it's a pretty big thing. I wonder if we have Michael, I wonder if you click one time if the dimensions will pop up. Didn't make it on there. Yeah, so the dimensions of this leach field are roughly 30 feet by 30 feet, something like that. And this one is more around 15 this way, and I want to say it's something like 8 or so that way. So it's kind of big, you know. If you like the ag lots up there they have space for it, but if you have a small lot, there's really probably not enough space for it. Good question. I guess. Yeah, there's a question. How deep is it? I just talked through all the. Yeah, I just said the length and the width, but how deep is it? Yeah, it's not very deep. I want to say just kind of ballpark. It's going to be something like this, stomach deep or something, maybe a little deeper than that. Yeah, so that kind of ties in with the site-specific requirements. Like Nancy said, hey, if your water table is close by, you might not be able to just do a septic tank. You might have to do an aerobic treatment unit first and then the leach field behind that. So it's hard to just blanket say, okay, we're all going to have septic tanks. It's hard to know for sure until you go to each site, do the soil test. All right, and then the last option is the cluster option. So it's like all of them. It starts with the lateral at your home. Often it goes to a septic tank, same one that I just described, to separate the solids out. Then it needs to go somewhere for treatment. So it's going to use either sewers or low pressure system. which would DHHL would be responsible for. And then it would go to some small treatment plant, or maybe some aerobic treatment unit or something like that. That would be DHHL's responsibility. And then it would go out to some kind of a large leach field for disposal or water reuse. But it would be shared. So that leach field that I just showed before was for one house. This would be multiplied, so everybody would kind of be tied into the same leach field. So you'd have a sewer bill, but it probably wouldn't be a city sewer bill. It would probably be some other, it would be through DHHL or through a contract. You would be responsible for the lateral, just like all of the options. The sewer, the treatment, the disposal, a water reuse system, all that would be DHHL or a contract operator. But there's really some space constraints for this. If you can imagine, like, you looked at that leach field and then multiply it by however many folks need connection. If you have to multiply it by 100 times, there's a big chunk of land that we would need to do that, and I don't think that we have that. But we're keeping it in. We're going to consider it and see if it makes sense, and if it does, great. If not, we throw it out. But this type of thing, I think, often on the mainland, when they're doing like a new development, it might make sense there, but that's not really our situation here. Next slide. Okay, yeah. So what we're looking at here on the left, this shows 4 homes, all with their septic tank. And then they've got this sewer pipe that goes and nicely flows downhill, right, to this distribution box. And then they've got this big shared leach field here. So that's like a really ideal scenario. That's not what it looks like here, but that's the concept. An alternative is, hey, maybe it wouldn't be a septic tank. Maybe it would just flow out through grinder pumps to a small high-tech wastewater treatment plant like this. It's nicely contained in this little shed here. It would still need a leach field for disposal, but there would be an option to use the water for irrigation potentially. There's a lot of what ifs, but that's another concept. But it all relies on a lot of shared space that we don't seem to have. Yeah, I don't even see any closed eyes yet, so thank you. The key things to consider is who's going to own the different pieces of this infrastructure. Is it going to be DHHL? Is it going to be the city? Is it going to be the folks in the community? Where are those lines of demarcation? Who owns and who operates what? Which we have pretty good ideas of where those lines of demarcation should be. Maintenance costs and who pays them. We don't want the community get strapped with unreasonable maintenance costs. So those will all be included in the report. Yeah, who's going to operate the system? Is it going to be the city? Is it going to be a contractor? Is there space to put this stuff? A little bit of a broken record on that one, but in Hawaii, that's always the hardest thing, is where do we fit stuff? Is it allowed by law? We need to develop these alternatives in accordance with the Department of Health. I know Destin has had his nose in the rules and regulations for the last few months. So. And then lastly, what does the community ultimately want? Right? We want to take into account what you want, what you don't want, knowing that we're never going to make everybody happy, but we need to do our best. So next steps, we're putting together this alternatives analysis and preliminary engineering report. Like I mentioned, we'll have it wrapped up in August. We're a decent bit of the way into it already. That's going to evaluate specific alternatives, which will probably be combinations of those concepts I just described. And it'll be specific to the community. Then ERG, that's Sydney and Teresa, who spoke earlier. They're working with DHHL and the Department of Health on the funding side of things, getting that lined up. And then next, we'll have a community meeting to share what our findings are in the report. We put those alternatives together and crank out the calculations, and we'll be able to share some specifics. That's the main things we wanted to share with you folks. Thanks for listening and staying awake.
So thank you so much for listening through the presentation. Now it's your opportunity to ask any questions you might have had about the presentation, anything you would like to know about. I think the main thing that we wanted to get across to you tonight is that come August, the department and its partners will have specific alternatives for you folks to consider. And what we wanted you to take away from tonight's presentation are all of the different factors that Jordan folks are going to be considering when they start to develop these alternatives for you folks to react to in August. So those were kind of the main points. But right now, if you have any questions, please raise your hand and I'll come over with the mic and let you ask those questions.
Okay, and Cherie is over there is going to be taking notes. And please feel free to get up and help yourself to some refreshments too. You know, you've been sitting for a while. So if you need to get up and move around, please feel free to do that too.
Yes, please take some refreshments. Okay.
Hi. At the beginning of the meeting, you said that Wai anae Valley is going to be like the one that's going to be starting first. Pilot project. Now, we was not the first one to be formed as far as Hawaiian Home. There's many other Hawaiian Home. How are they going about doing this cesspool? Because you showed the map of the island with all the cesspools, and we have a lot of Hawaiian Home that have cesspool.
So the question was, since Wai anae is going to be the first, how will the department do similar activities for other similar older homesteads? And Nancy, you want to?
So that's why we're getting the technical assistance from EPA, because we're not just looking at Wai anae, they're actually looking at what would be needed statewide. They're not studying those communities yet, but DHHL has done cesspool assessment studies for all the homesteads across the Wai'aina. So we do know, we have a pretty good idea of what we're up against, but what this project's going to do is it's going to create a template or, basically a methodology, a way to go ahead and start doing those projects in other homesteads as well. But we really want to get through as much as we can here in Wai anae, to figure out how to do that. And, for places like Molokai, I mean, the Kaunakakai wastewater treatment facility, those lines only run a mile from, they only go to Kaunakakai and like Manila Camp. And so, and our homesteads are farther away, but we're also talking to all the counties about extending sewer, about working things out in Keaukaha, on Molokai. So we're pursuing a lot of different avenues, and we're thinking about those other homesteads too. Does that answer your question?
I'll go him first and then.
Hi. Question about grinder pumps. My street I live on, there's about 6 to 8 homes that are below the main. So how do you, are they all separate lines running up, or do we connect at a certain point? And what pushes the main line up?
So I'm just going to repeat the question. So the grinder pumps, there's about 6 of them on the lot. Are they going to go to one central point and then go up, or are they each individually going to go up?
It's a good question. So there's basically 2 ways that it would go, and it depends on the specific situation, but either you would have the gravity sewer that's running down the road, and your individual line from the grinder pump would go right up to the gravity sewer, dump into it, and then flow by gravity. Or suppose your road is going uphill for some distance and there's not a gravity sewer there, then it connects to one pressure main, and your grinder pump has enough pressure to overcome all the other pumps that are connected to it. So when we design that, when we evaluate it, we take into account how many homes might ultimately connect, and they're all pumping into the same line.
Main grinder pump, because we live in a cul-de-sac.
So the question is, for a cul-de-sac area, is there such a thing as a main grinder pump from each of the individual lots that sends it up?
Another good question. Yeah, there is, and that's part of the alternatives that we're looking at. That's more of a traditional gravity sewer system. Basically, you take advantage of the topography of the land, you flow down as far as you can. Maybe it would be the end of the cul-de-sac, and there would be one pump station that collects it all there, puts it into a pipe, sends the pipe out as far as it needs to go to connect to the rest of the sewer, and then flow by gravity. So far we've got some alternatives coming together that do both of those things. Now we got to evaluate what's the cost, what's the advantages, disadvantages. There's always a backup. We've always got to design them with backups. But if you have your individual grinder pump at your house, then that is a different story. Usually you just have one. Sometimes they have 2, but those are pretty reliable. And there's also the well that it's in has quite a bit of capacity to hold sewage for the plumber to come out, and usually it's something small. Maybe it's replacing a fuse, maybe it's replacing an impeller, something like that, off the shelf parts. But no, I hear you letting somebody else worry about it, going to some neighborhood pump station that's maintained by DHHL or the city. I don't know if that's something that's preferred, or I'd be happy to hear if folks have something they'd prefer, whether they don't want to pump on their yard or something like that.
Just for the record, the street you live on is?
Alapoy Place.
Yeah, so when we do our alternatives, we can make specific reference to that particular street. Jan had a question, and then I just wanted to, so I'll do Jan, I'll do the hand over there, and then the hand in the back. I do want to acknowledge to those of you who are participating online, we do see your questions in the chat, and we will get to them. So thank you for your patience for those of you who are online. So I'll go to Jan, and then gentleman over there, and then gentleman over there.
I just wanted to, so Jan Makepa, I'm president for Wai anae Valley Homestead. I just wanted to kind of follow up with Uncle Gilbert's question, being that this is the pilot project, and his concern that what about all of the other homesteads? And I can only hope that the EPA would also extend the technical assistance to other homesteads as well, being that this is the pilot project. and the template that we put in place. But my question is, and I'm looking at this because it, from the what you folks had shared, it kind of looks like at this point, and looking at the map, that sewer conversion is the most likely choice because of where there's existing sewer lines and so on and so forth. So we know that, because you mentioned how much it costs for a septic system. Do we know how much it costs for a sewer lateral connection for a lessee on the inside as opposed to installing a septic system?
Okay, two questions. One is, it seems like from the presentation that sewer connection is probably the most likely alternative. And then two, how much is the sewer lateral cost between the house and the main sewer line?
Thanks, John. So the cost of, we have pretty good cost information on sewer laterals. There's been a good number of projects recently that are building new sewer laterals, big numbers of them, like city projects, both here and in Maui. There's good information on it. Off the top of my head, I wish I knew what that number is. I'm sorry. I don't want to just throw a number out there that's wrong, but we have very good information on that we'll be using for the cost estimates in the report. Yeah, it certainly would be less. It would certainly be less than the cost of the septic tank. By, it would be a fraction of the cost of the septic tank. And then that it's looking like it's probably going to be a sewer being the recommendation. Maybe it's a little bit obvious because there's sewer right there already nearby. But how that's accomplished, like for the folks on Halapoi and Puhinalo, there's a lot of different ways to do it, and that's we would need to figure out. But we really don't know. In other evaluations that we've done, the obvious thing cost-wise has been the septic, but usually that's in neighbor islands where they have bigger lots. And it's a long ways to get to the sewer. You have sewer already right in your neighborhood, so that might be the lowest cost at least.
Thank you, Jordan. So I'll go here.
My question is, for those of us who are still hooked up to Cesspool and our existing lateral is high enough, will we be able to hook up directly to the 6-inch pipe that's going to be installed in the yard? In other words, we won't need any septic tanks or anything like that. That would be my question.
So we could know if I misinterpreted your question. So the question is, for those that are in septic tank who are at high enough elevation and and they have the ability to connect straight to a sewer line, can they do that? Did I get that correct? Okay.
That sounded about right to me. I'd like to say yes. Technically, yes, you should be able to. I can think of a situation where it could be complicated. Like suppose you're on a street where for some reason everybody else's house is down low and the sewer is up high, and for whatever reason your plumbing is up high. So that's a pretty unique situation. I don't know if it exists. I think we could probably address it, but what we're going to need to do, I think, is between now and the draft. What would be great is to know your home so we can have a look at it, have a look at where the sewer is, and we can know if that's the situation or not. We'd be happy to hear anybody out on that, I think.
Okay. Okay, so you already talked to a contractor that might be able to do the installation. Okay, and what street do you live on?
Kaniki, and
Oo, Kaniki. Ka- Kapa, kap,
Pakai,
kapai, kai. Koolina, okay. 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 And then I'll go here and then there. And then if there's no one else in the room, I'm gonna go to the questions. Oh, okay, right here after that the gentleman in the hat over there.
hi, I moved into this project in 1982, the week before Hurricane Eva hit. And uh, before I moved in, I watched all the cesspools going down into the hole. They were huge all over the place, okay? And now our increment have to change, okay? Um, the thing is that I live in Puhinalo, okay? They came to my house one time to check the measurements and stuff like that. My cesspool is so close to the front wall. I don't know how they're going to do this. I asked if they could put the septic tank into the pool, the cesspool, maybe work like that. But my question is that if we do go ahead with this hookup and it goes out into the road, um, being that it's Puinalo Road, I mean, do they have some kind of to keep the electric thing the pump to work, to keep going in because the power keeps going off in Hawaiian Home. So I'm happy that I have solar, but not everybody do. So, yeah, that's my question. If that pump is going to work on some kind of solar system, or they have their own electric.
So the question is for the grinder pumps, what's their power source? And is there a backup?
Yeah, that's a good question. They generally run on 120-volt AC power. And then the backup is typically the capacity in the tank that the pump is on, and that's time. That buys you some amount of time. I'll look into if there's backup. I don't know if there's battery backup options, something like that. Offhand, I'm not sure. I haven't heard of that myself on the grinder pumps themselves. Now, if there's a neighborhood pump station, like we talked about, where everybody's sewers kind of flow to one point, a pump station like that would always have some kind of a backup power, like a small generator or something like that can kick on if you lose power. But that's a good question on the grinder pump. I wish I knew offhand, but we'll look into it.
Hello, good evening. First off, I just like to know we live on Kaniaki Street from Wai anae Valley, the high part. Was wondering why did they go behind our property kind of far to go into the residential? So that's my first question. Second is, since we live there, you think we might have to install a septic tank? If we do have to install a septic tank, is the sooner the better. We like find out the price, the dimension and stuff, because you know how bills every year goes up. The longer we take on this kind of price, if we have a fixed price, years go by, we don't want to pay more for whoever's going to help us funding that. And yeah, just needed the dimension again for a septic tank because I got the measurement for our front. The cesspool is about 30 feet down. I looked inside. We got it clean, pretty wide. And every 2 years, got it clean out. But now, since my family moved out, we're going like every 5 years.
Making sure I understand the question correctly. The first question was, how come the sewer line went around your street instead of and never went through in the first place? I don't think Jordan knows the answer because he wasn't around when it was built, and unfortunately, I don't think any of the staff were around when the subdivision was built. So We don't quite know why the design went around, but we do know that eventually we're going to have to remedy the situation and fix it so that everyone is off a cesspool. So the second question I think you had was, what are the dimensions of the septic tank? You rather know that information sooner so you can get um, pricing and costs for that. Is it incorrect to say that when you come back out in August, for each of the streets, you'll probably have more detail about what each street's um, cesspool conversion options will be and what options are infeasible?
Yeah, I think just we will by that time have a better idea of what's likely, what are some of the options for your street. I'm trying to think, I'm trying to picture Kaneaki um, when you, that's the main road off Wai anae Valley. Oh, okay, right. Yes. I don't, we are scratching our heads really for, it could be, but thinking about where the connection point is, I feel like they could still have done it. We were scratching our heads why they weren't there in the first place, but I don't know. There could be a good reason why. But yeah, size-wise, leach field, just ballpark, 30 feet by 30 feet, if you have that. And then the septic tank is smaller, you know, but still, I think I was looking at it, something like 15 by 8, something like that. So I mean, that's like, you know, the size of all these tables right here for the leach field, and then, you know, the length of that table that you're sitting at, something like that. So that's big for the septic tank. But I know some of the lots do have the space, just ballpark.
And then that ballpark 30 by 30 is assuming that the soil is conducive for seeping, correct?
Yeah, that 30 foot by 30 feet, I think that's pretty conservative. When I looked at what the numbers are, it's all based on the percolation rate of the soil. So I was thinking, you know, suppose you have bad soil. I didn't want to give you guys a number that's like based on the best soil there is. But oftentimes in Hawaii, there's pretty bad soil, and it might not even be enough for Department of Health to even approve it in the first place if it's not showing that it can drain. But I don't know, it sounds like from the cesspools that I'm hearing, they're kind of working and you don't have to pump them out, you know, once a month or something like that. So maybe your soils are okay.
Thanks, and I'll go over there.
Although I have a question, I wanted to recircle and recap what was said. I just wanted a clear and concise answer. I think I read it on page 4, and I think you mentioned it. A lot of us homeowners was wondering about the seepage using our existing cesspool. We all have 5,000 square feet lots. A lot of people did home improvements. The lots are practically concreted, built extensions. So we were trying eliminating the leach field, so using the existing cesspool. But what was said on page 4, and I think you mentioned, which just wanted a clear, concise answer, that DOH says no. So with that said, I collaborated with Hawaii Engineer Group when they came out for the assessment. I live on one of the 2 challenging streets, which is Puhinalo Place and Halapoi above me. Our elevations is below level. So they said, based on their assessment, the LPS is not going to work, nor a cluster, because there's no land to put a cluster. So we have to go IWS, which is septic. Now, I read into the federal regs, and it was reiterated when Ted was there at Wai anae Library, that the federal regs eventually wants to push even septic tanks to tie into the streets. So the septic tanks have a shelf life for about 20 years. So if that's mandated in the future and we invest 70 grand into the septic tank, we're gonna recircle around and pay another additional 70 grand fee. With Wai anae Valley being the pilot program, how can we prevent us from circling around and coughing out more money? So this is gonna be a struggle, especially with the septic tank having a shelf life. And the federal regs does state eventually, septic tank or not, they want everybody to tie into the street. So is there an incident action plan for this future?
So making sure I summarize the question correctly. It first question was, can you confirm whether or not you can use the existing cesspool for septic tank or vertical leach field? Yeah. Okay. Okay. So does DOH allow the existing cesspool to be a leach field? That's the first question. And then the second question was, if your family does put in a septic tank now, is there any rules, regulations? What's the recourse in the future if there's no rules and regulations that say even the septic tank's got to connect to the stream?
Additional 70 grand. This is mandated in the future, 20 years down the road. We're gonna come back. We're gonna have to tie in. We're gonna have to dump money. Plus, you have to understand, septic tank only have a shelf life of 20 years. So whether we reach that point or not, you're gonna have to dump in more money to upgrade your septic tank. So it's a damage we do damage home. It's for like a solid IFE plan where it can just all just like tie in one time, just
Okay.
I like the forward thinking. But the connecting the septic tank using the cesspool as a seepage pit is not allowed by the rules, but DOH, I understand, has allowed it before as a variance if there's no other option. East side, I've heard that there's been situations where they allowed it. We're asking DOH for clarity on that, but the rules do not allow it. And even for individual wastewater systems, septic tanks, aerobic treatment units, even the regs only really allow those in the worst case scenario. Like they don't want to allow them. They only allow them in the first place if there's no other option, being there's no sewer. When they wrote the rules, I think they thought that there were going to be sewers everywhere, and that just never happened. But you mentioned the low pressure sewer system, and somebody saying that it wouldn't work, but I think it is feasible. I'm not sure why Hawaii Engineering Group would have said that, but I think there's nothing that precludes it from not working in any of the, we've looked at all the, all the different roads, the grades, and it looks like it'll work for everybody. I think can't remember how many connections. What road are you folks on? Puhinalo. Yeah, so that Puhinalo and Halapoi are the roads that really stand out to us. I'm pretty sure those are the ones that we've been looking at the most. And yeah, we've got some alternatives coming together with gravity sewer to pump station, and low pressure sewer system that would take it to the main on, is it Kaneaki? Is that the main road that it connects to there? So as far as options that are not IWS, there's a handful of feasible ones, but I agree. This, the septic tank is it could be feasible if you have space, but you don't know what the regulations hold. There's not regulations now that say, hey, you got to ultimately convert a septic tank, but who knows what the future holds. Connecting to sewer is probably more future proof.
Something that Roger Babcock, who runs the environmental branch of the city, told us was that it is an ordinance that if you have, install a septic system and then later on you're required to connect to the sewer, that what they will do is they will provide the lateral for free and they will waive your sewer fees for 15 years. So that's actually already on the books. So that's something that the city is offering people. So just keep that in mind.
So the data that Jordan mentioned, or Nancy?
It's in the ordinance and we can get you that information.
So Cherie, write down DHHL will get the ordinance related to new sewer fees and waiving them. Yeah. Okay. Other questions in the room? If not, I'm gonna tackle some of the questions that came in on the chat. Okay.
Mahalo. Jordan, you said report for funding. Yeah, that's what you guys doing. Teresa and Sydney putting together funding. I just like, no, for who? For us, for DHHL, for fixing the infrastructure, for who?
Okay, so the question is, the department and its partners are doing a report on Cesspool's alternatives to turn in for funding. And the question is, funding for who? The department or lessees or both?
So part of this study is to figure all of that out. The state revolving fund, the SRF, like the city just recently, like about a year ago, they did a grant program. Unfortunately, the demand was way bigger than how much money they had available. And it also required the homeowner to, be reimbursed and all that sort of thing. So, I mean, that's one way to look at doing it, but we're also looking at basically DHHL getting the money and doing the work so that the lessees don't have to deal with any of it. So
So yes, the funding part, we're looking at the funding so that we can minimize the costs to the lessee. How much that is and what the individual costs will be, we don't know yet. But that is the intent, that we're looking at funding sources that will minimize the costs to convert the cesspool for the lessee. Okay, I saw a hand there and then a hand over there. Oh, okay. You had your hand up?
How much is going to cost? How much does it cost to take out your septic tank? I mean your cesspool and the wall to get the pipe in there. How much is it going to cost? I mean, who's going to fill the hole in when they take the septic tank out? And who's paying? Who's going to fix the wall when they put the pipe in and do all the digging?
So how much is it going to cost to put the pipe in, fix any damage that putting the pipe in causes to the property, and then fill in the cesspool? I think those are questions that we want to answer, but we don't have the answers yet. When we do go for funding sources, we will obviously look at those questions, because our intent is to go for funding sources that minimize the cost to the lessee for the conversion. If no more other questions in the room at this time, I mean, if when we start going through the ones on the chat and you get that sparks more questions for you, just raise your hand and I'll come back. But for now, I'll turn our attention to the chat. Okay. Question number 1 from Pa. For those who live on Cape Ala Place, the road goes uphill and the front yard is not large enough for a septic tank. What would happen in this situation?
This is this is one of those roads that falls into the Puhinalo and Halapoi category that me and Destin, I think, are most familiar with, and that would be a candidate for the low pressure sewer, where everybody would have the grinder pump. Oh, it's not one of those ones. Oh, sorry, sorry, mixed up. So then, if there's no space for a septic tank, then it would, the obvious alternative would be a gravity sewer. And it would connect it would flow down the road and connect at, I guess it would be Kaneaki. So in the individual home, there would be a lateral going from the home, and it would connect into the road at the sewer main and flow towards Kaneaki.
Next question from Sunshine. Sunshine Sayers. Oh, that's just a sign in. Okay. From Catherine Pakaki. When you test our soil rather than we decide which option to go to with all, sorry, let me start again. When you test our soil rather than we decide which option to go with, will someone tell us what options are best based on our soil?
This project doesn't include us testing soil. We're not going to test everybody's soil as part of this project, unfortunately. But we can look at everybody's property individually and determine if you may have enough space for the individual wastewater system, septic tank, or not. The next step after this, when it ultimately becomes a construction project, that's when they would test the soil. And then they can determine what specific system you would need. And that's only if it's not a sewer or low pressure sewer system. If the alternative ends up being sewer or low pressure sewer system for everybody, then nobody needs to do any soil tests.
Mohala de Lima asks, approximately when will lessees with cesspools be formally notified of the approved wastewater system option designated for their lot? I'm not sure if we know that in the process or if that comes out during the final report or.
I can start. We don't know exactly. I think what we do know is this evaluation is going to take roughly a year, and then there will be some time frame of obtaining funding. And then after that, I think that's when everybody would understand what the ultimate project may be. But then it would still have to be designed after that. So I'd say it's at least, it probably at least a couple years out before it's, for sure what it's going to be. 3 to 5, says Nancy.
Makahala asks, sorry I joined late. How is this conversion funded? Nancy, you want to take that or?
So again, that is the point of the technical assistance, because the folks who know how to do these things, and they've done it in other places in the country, other places in Hawaii, They're going to help us work all of that out so we know where we're going to get the money from to fund the preferred solution. And so, yeah, to be decided, but we'll have more information for you by August. We have to put their study together, the engineering, the PER, because that goes into the application. So when we apply to the state Department of Health for the state revolving fund monies, we have to have enough of a description of this project to have it make sense how much money we're asking for. And then hopefully Department of Health will approve it, and then we can really get to work.
Next question is that the one that's highlighted? Okay. The power does go out quite often in the homestead. Having no power for a number of hours, what is the plan for a backup? And then I guess that's referring to those lots that might have to have a grinder pump.
Yeah, so for loss of power, the best option would be either septic tank or gravity sewer connection, because it neither requires power. It just flows by gravity to where it's going to be. So if the power goes out, it works just fine. The grinder pump is the one I think that we're going to look into for backup power sources, see if there's a battery backup option for that. But otherwise, the loss of power, to deal with the loss of power, you have the sump that the pump is contained in. There's a capacity. Sewage will keep flowing into that, and it has time to fill up. It has a number of hours before it would overflow. So that's how you would deal with the loss of power. But like I said, yeah, we'll look into the backup power options for it.
And then Nancy, you got a question from
Auntie has to leave, but she did want us to reply to her via email. Auntie, is it okay if I share your question now? Okay. What Auntie is saying is that my lateral came into my concrete driveway. My cesspool is located in my front yard and not in my garage. Will the city or DHHL redo my lateral and bring it under my stone wall into my front yard to my cesspool? I think we'd have to look at that specific situation to figure that out, right? She's on Kaneaki. We'll get this information into the project.
I'll go back to the, sorry, okay. Question there and any other, okay.
So the technical assistance is giving us options for different situations. But does the Department of Health have the final say as to what we'll be allowed to have?
So the question is, will the Department of Health have the final say in what is approved for the cesspool conversion?
I think they don't exactly, they don't get to pick the alternative that we recommend, but the alternatives that we recommend have to be something that passes that meets their rules. And some of their rules have some flexibility in them for them to have the final say, like on the septic tanks. So in that sense, to some degree, they have the final say to some degree. You know, if we say, hey, we want to do all septic tanks, not saying that's what we want to do, it wouldn't be clear whether or not they're going to allow it. The other alternatives, like the sewer or the low pressure sewer system, that's all, they would happily approve either of those, whatever works for us.
We have met with them. They've been very good to work with. They are going to give us a lot of guidance along with the EPA technical assistance to develop an application that will get approved by the Department of Health. So I think that increases our chances a whole lot. And I think the one reason this project's so important and the Closing America's wastewater access gap project is so important is because it's supposed to help lower income communities, particularly communities of color, Native communities. It's helping tribes on the mainland. So the EPA, I think, is really encouraging the State Department of Health to assist DHHL and our homesteaders in every way possible. That's been my impression.
Okay, so I'll go here and then come back to you, and then I'll go to the chat.
My question is about leach fields. Is it like a cookie cutter size, or is it depending on your house? Is it 30 by 30, or could it be 8 by 40, or is it a square footage deal? How do we do that? Because I'm emptiness. It's me and my wife. We work all day. We get home at 7 at night. There's 2 number 2s a day, and that's it.
That's good. It's daily. So, the question is it for the leach field, is it a cookie cutter size, or is it vary based on the characteristics of the household, like household size?
Yeah, it varies. There are two main things that it's based on, and that's the soil percolation rate that's tested and the number of bedrooms in the house. And it's based on square feet. So it's based on square feet, but it also is based on, the equipment that you can buy, So you don't have free range to, arrange it however you want. But yeah, the leach field is really based on the square feet. Oh, sorry. No, the number of bedrooms and the soil defines. Yeah, I hear that, but that's how the rule is defined like that. And in order for Department of Health to pass it, that's what they'd be checking. So it's number of bedrooms, the soil percolation. You use those two things. There's a table in their rules, and it will tell you that's whatever the square feet is. It's 200 square feet or whatever the number is. Correct. I hear that. I hear you.
I'll just go repeat the comment. So the comment was maybe the Department of Health takes a look at the future, and what is now might not be what is in the future. Okay.
As you were talking, I had an idea, but it's out of the box. We all have cesspools, or unless they had their lateral put in already. But why can't they do research to put a holding tank in the cesspool to collect the affluent so that people like him, they don't have to have a huge leach field? That's just thinking out of the box.
So the question is, why can't we think about putting a holding tank in the cesspool to kind of compact the space? Okay.
And so the sewage would flow from the house. It would go to your cesspool, hold it, and then when it fills up, You call to have it pumped out? Oh. Ah, got it. Yeah. Yeah, there was another question about that. The Department of Health doesn't allow that. In the past, there's been situations that they have when there's no other option, but it's not allowed. Yeah, the whole, yeah, because yeah, I'll try and explain. I think.
So for those of you online, the question was, what is the difference between a leach field and a seepage tank pit?
All right, so yeah, there is a difference. The seepage pit is great for just getting the water out of there. It takes the water away from your house and it goes down and then eventually into the water table. There's no real treatment. The leach field is treatment. It may not seem like it, but it's an engineered thing. there's soil that has certain properties like drainage, and it attracts native microbes that just show up. Yeah, and they start breaking down whatever's left in the sewage that wasn't held in the tank. So that's why these things have to be big. That space for the leach field is designed to be a size that has enough space for microbes to get in there and chew up all that doo-doo that's what really? But these just show up. You build the leach field and the bugs just show up. When you give them the sewage, they show up and chew it up. So the leach field has to be designed with enough space and the right kind of soil to allow those microbes to show up and do the work. No. Well, you have to have the right soil. If you just have a hole in the ground, it's not going to be the right conditions for them to show up. It has to be like a granular soil. But the space thing, there needs to be enough space for enough bugs. You don't want to, if you oversaturate it, they can't do the work. And then you just have sewage going into the ground. And that's what the cesspool really is.
Did you have your hand up? Okay. So I'll come to you and then I'll come back to the chat.
Thank you. Early on, you mentioned that things had to be proven for us to use it, and we weren't going to do anything new. Now, I'm not sure why that is, but, and I don't have a lot of information about incinerated toilets, but that's an option where you don't need a leach field because the waste gets burnt. And then it can either be used as fertilizer or thrown away. So why are we not looking at new things?
So the question is, why aren't we looking at new things? Um, the incinerator toilet. I actually used an incinerator toilet on Coconut Island in Kaneohe Bay. It did burn my waste, but it was a smell I will never forget. But I think, and I'll start to answer the question, but maybe Jordan and Nancy can fill it in. I think part of the reason why we're looking at less out of the box things is that the more traditional solutions are the solutions that are more likely to get funded by the funding sources that we're looking at. But I'll pass it to Jordan and Nancy if they have other mana'o on that question.
Thanks. Yeah, I don't want to come off as being closed-minded. We're not trying to be closed-minded. And incinerator toilets they're kind of new, but they're proven. It's a proven technology, but you would still need a connection for your bath, for the tub, for your washing machine. You'd still need something to do with all that other wastewater. So the incinerator toilet could work for your toilet, but there's still a lot of other waste that needs to go somewhere at everybody's house. But I think we should touch on that in the report, really, of why I think isn't maybe the whole answer.
And, when we look at Molokai, for instance, the more rural areas, we definitely want to look at alternatives. We've been meeting with, there's wastewater alternatives and innovations, VI. They've been looking at a lot of alternatives and educating folks about it and pushing the Department of Health to start approving some of these lower cost, low impact alternatives. But the Department of Health isn't quite there yet, but they're definitely getting pressured to start being a little more flexible. But I do think in urban areas, I think the problem for most of urban Honolulu and Oahu is, you've got small lots, houses that are close together, and so, I mean, again, the leach field is an issue, but, some of the alternatives that can be done in more rural areas might be a little more challenging to do on Oahu.
Maybe one more thing I'll add to that is that there are companies out there that claim to be able to do certain things, and you can look up online and find all kinds of products that for wastewater specifically that claim to do certain things, and we want to be really careful about not signing up for something like that doesn't have a proven track record. We don't want to end up getting gouged, left behind like that. So it's, not as much of not wanting to think we're going to think outside the box, but within the boundaries of what we know works.
Were there other questions in the room that I didn't see? Oh. Okay, I'll go you and then you after, okay.
Just a general question. You keep bringing up pump stations. Is there a tentative location for these pump stations within the homestead?
The question is there a tentative location at this time for pump stations within the homestead?
I don't think that we've got specific locations for pump stations. We know the areas that are low points that need them, but we haven't cited them yet. I don't know. Do you think that's accurate, Destin? Yeah. There's a handful of problem areas like that, but the pump stations that would be in this neighborhood are really small, and you almost wouldn't know that they are there. They wouldn't be much different in size than like what I showed for the grinder pump. But yeah, when we have the report, we'll have maps and things like that, and we'd have tentative potential locations for them.
I'll come to you.
Well, majority here that lives on Puhinalo. I'm looking at the leach field, and we're right next to a big giant park, right next to us, and we can't go ahead and use that as one that can help all the people on maybe Puhinalo. Not possible, huh?
So the question is, can they use the big open space as potential collective? Can you send it to one empty place? Yeah.
Does everybody want to use the park? Yeah, that we can look into it. I think there's probably a lot of challenges to it. Yeah, we will consider it, but yeah, I think there's probably challenges with it too. I think Jan was going to add something.
You let me come back? Okay, I'll go to the chat real fast. Getting my steps in today. The PVC pipe that hooks up to the cesspool now on my property is at least 20 feet above the road. Who would be responsible for digging the line? I think would it be fair to say that the project details about who's responsible for the construction at this point, we don't quite know yet, or do you have a reasonable idea at this moment?
So I think we don't specifically know. I'm trying to make sure I understand the question. If the cesspool is 20 feet above the road, then the lateral would end there, and the lateral would need to be extended 20 feet from the cesspool to the road. And I think the idea is that the project as a whole would do that, and that it wouldn't be everybody's home's individual responsibilities. The project would take it into the yard and connect to your piping.
Anything within the walls before it gets connected was our responsibility. So I just wanted to clarify that, because that's where the concern was with our people, because now you have to bust down the walls to get in to connect, to get that lateral to get to the sewer that's on the road. So I guess the clarification of who will actually be paying for that, to connect to the road, I think is a lot where our people were asking. Besides, when you got to tear down that wall in order to access that lateral pipe to hit the road.
So the concern previously expressed was who pays for the lateral between the house and the sewer line, and who pays for any of the things you got to move out of the way in order to get to the sewer line. So I do think, based on the conversations we've been having on funding sources, that it does seem like there are several funding sources, and correct me if I'm wrong, that would be able to cover the cost of the lateral between the house and the sewer line. Okay. Jan, yeah.
So I guess this would be for you, Jordan. So on Puhinalo and Halapoi, can a pump system be installed maybe in the road area that can push the waste up to Kaniaki? Is that an option?
Okay, I'll answer Jan's first, and then we'll go cast iron pipes. I got a sore spot with cast iron pipes too. Pumping from Puhinalo and Halapoi, what would the pumping system? I think generally there's two different approaches that we would do for those ones, and it would be everybody gets a pump at their house, and it pumps up and to where it can flow by gravity, or everybody's lateral goes in and flows by gravity to a low point to one big pump, or it would be probably be two pumps, the duty and the standby. And then that pumping system would pump it all in one shot. So the one big pumping system is kind of the traditional, and then the low pressure sewer system with the grinder pumps, that's kind of not really a newer concept, but that's just a different way to do it. And then for the I don't think there's any expectation that there would be a requirement to change out cast iron pipes, but there would be, we would need to connect to wherever your house goes to the cesspool. And at some point the line would be cut, and the cesspool would, normally how they do it is they pump the cesspool out and they fill it with like a concrete, and then they connect the line to wherever it's going to go, whether it's the sewer or to the grinder pump or whatever it be.
Is there any other questions in the chat, or are we all Paul? Okay. Okay. One question. We do have like one more slide with the next steps, but it's also in your handout. So if you gotta go, you gotta go. But the next steps are in your handout.
For that common grinder pump you were talking about that everybody feeds into, what is the potential for it backing up into the houses? Because I live at the very bottom of the street and I don't want everybody else's mess.
And the question is, what is the potential for if there's a neighborhood pump station that everybody connects to, flows down by gravity to this pump station. I suppose the pumps break down, power goes out, thing starts filling up, and you're the next in line to receive it. Something like that probably happened, say, like Lahaina, when they had well, everything went down basically. Yeah, right. Yeah. But everything goes down. Hurricane, everything goes down. But these things are always situated with backup power. Yeah, you'd have to get fuel, and they do it. These things happen. The city is equipped to deal with power outages. They deal with it, but not for weeks is uncommon. It's a pretty rare situation. Yeah, no, I hear that. But yeah, backup power is a big. You gotta have Plan B. Right. So yeah, we'll talk about backup power in the report.
I think something the department can do between now and the next meeting in late August is also maybe talk story with the city and county sewer guys and see, for other locations on the island that have similar pumps, and during power outages, what is the city's protocol for addressing the situation? Yeah. Okay, last question. Clarification, please. Would the cost of backfilling the existing cesspool be included in your project's costs? And I see nodding heads of yes, that is the intent, would be for the funding that we're seeking to help offset the cost to backfill the cesspool. In our case, our lot is located at the corner of Haleipoi and Kaneaki. Can we connect directly to the sewer line without the pump?
The answer, I think so. Yeah. Mahalo. Yeah, we think so, pretty sure. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Oh, okay. I think I misunderstood the question. Um, so it depends. We need to look closely at that one. Yeah, I think the answer is we really don't know. We really don't know at this point. There's a couple different ways it could go. But the goal is for the sewer options, we want to minimize who has a pump. If there's any way that we can set it up so you don't need a pump, we're going to do it. So that's the goal.
The next question is when time for do the project construction, time for switch our cesspool, is there going to be a turn off water time frame to where it's going to be done in that day, or is it going to take a couple weeks where we're going to have to stay at a hotel or family house? So I guess when the actual conversion starts, about how long does it take to finish the conversion and the house is occupiable again?
It's a ways out, but I think it's going to be pretty quick connection. Like if anything, I think it would be hours. It would be hours, not days.
Also, for the backup, there have been times we are without power for over hours. Are those backups going to be able to handle that long? So it's similar question to the other questions we've received tonight.
Yeah. I'll make sure that we include in the report the capacity of the pump tank to hold. So if power goes out, how long do you have? We're also going to add the backup power. You know, what options are there to have backup power? Battery, solar, something like that, if there are.
I think this is just a comment from our mailbox. Water flows to Kaneaki. And then mahalo, Juanita. From Colleen, when I was awarded the property, I was informed that it was connected, but in April they came out twice and was unable to find the line. So I guess we'll need to investigate Colleen's concern. So I don't know if you're, anyone familiar with? Okay. So I guess Colleen, if you can give us your lot number, we can further investigate that if you're still online. Okay. I guess last call for questions. So I guess to summarize, the next steps, Jordan and his team, they're gonna go back. They're gonna do their analysis. Excellent feedback tonight. I think it really will help inform their alternatives analysis and provide alternative solutions that will better fit the concerns that we heard tonight. Obvious. So is there any site visit in between now and August, or there might be? Okay, so there might be one site visit Jordan and his team will do in the community between now and August, but the next time department and Jordan and his team will see you folks, the next time there will be some alternatives that will be presented to you folks for your initial feedback and reactions. So, oh, yes. Thank you for that. There are still 37 lots that the department hasn't been able to confirm if there is a cesspool on it because we haven't been able to go onto the lot We haven't been able to make contact with the lessee and get permission from the lessee to go onto the lot. So those maps and the map in your handout, those indicate the lots that we were unable to make a determination. If you know the person that lives there, and we kindly ask that you just let them know, hey, the department is wanting to just go onto your lot just to make sure there is a cesspool or not a cesspool, so that we can help you in the future to convert. Yeah, or let Jan know. So yeah, that would be a big help to us, is if a friendly face can remind your neighbor to help contact the department. One of the last slides is our contact information. So if you do have additional questions that pop into your mind after tonight, you can send it to us. It's dhhl.planning@hawaii.gov. You can send it to that one. I believe your contact information is in, or, yeah, and Jordan's contact information is in there too. So if you had questions, feel free to contact him as well. If nothing else, we do have extra food. So if you want to take a quick sugar home or some oranges, feel free to do so that we don't have to take it home.